order this June meeting of the RSU 25 school committee. If you would all please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jim, would you please be kind enough to take the pledge of to take the attendance? Do it again. You can also take the pledge.
I've completed that. Mr. Foster,
I am here.
Mr. Burgess.
Here.
Ms. Foster.
Yes, here.
Frazier.
Here.
Mr. Nealon. Here. Mr. Wentworth.
Here.
Mr. Carr.
Here.
Ms. Appleton down.
Here.
All right, you have a full board.
Thank you. This is our time for public participation. If you are here and you would like to publicly participate, you can please come up before our wonderful crystal podium. If you are not here and you would also like to publicly participate, you can email for public comment at publiccomment@rsu25.org, or you can phone in for public comment at 307-8099. And I do know we have someone here to do a public comment, and he is right over here, and Ron Russell, if you please come on.
This is the first public comment. Thank you. At a regular meeting.
It's the first public comment, and hopefully he's not gonna scream at us.
No,
Like the Lester.
yeah. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Russell and I live on Verona Island. I also represent House District 17, which are the towns of Bucksport, Orland, Verona Island, and Penobscot. And I'm here tonight on official duties. And I got a call that said there is a person of note in the room, and it would be good to talk about him a little bit from the level of the appreciation of the state. So that would be Mr. Jim Boothby, who I've known. We sit on the Economic Development Committee together, and we traveled a little bit together. I called him up one time and I said, Jim, I'm on the Labor and Housing Committee, and we got this big bill coming in about paid family medical leave. And where the representatives that brought the bill forward are traveling around the state, trying to get people together to talk about it. So I called Jim, and he agreed that he would go down to Jackson Labs with me and join the panel. So when I got the call from Senator Nicole Grohowski, and she was going to come tonight too, and said she actually sort of started this process. And she said, can you fill in for me? I said, I'd be happy to. I know Jim, I like Jim, and I couldn't think of anything I'd rather do. So at first I thought, well, I kind of knew what it was, but then I called Tom today and said, well, you know, do you know about this? And is it okay? He said, yeah. And I thought, well, is this a roast? I need this. And then, so I talked to him a little bit about, well, I know he's like forever. He sort of worked and did lots of great things, but then it sounded like maybe he was saving that. So he said, well, maybe some stories. So I thought, well, geez, we rode down to Bar Harbor that day. And I remember part of our conversation had to do with sort of our youth. And we were talking about stories, you know, as a couple of older guys do. And I said, I think there were some good ones in there. If it is a roast, I could kind of use that. But then when I dug a little deeper, I didn't really remember them. I just remembered that they were good, and we were kind of back and forth, embellishing, you know, sort of talking about our street creds a little bit. But when I thought about it a little bit more, what really came through and what I remembered was, here is a guy that really cares about what he does. He talked a lot about the kids, and I could tell he cared about them. I'd heard him in economic development. He talked about this board, and he had glowing things to say. He talked about the administrations of all the schools, and he had great things to say about them. And it really came through in a good way. And then over the last couple of years, as I've served in the legislature, Jim has been a frequent I guess, constituent that's made contact. And, he's done it in all the best interests of what he does. He pays attention to what happens in Augusta, and you need to. And in a way, he's sort of like this education, local guardian angel for me. Because you go over there and you just know that there are all these people that have these grand ideas, but sometimes they don't really think about what happens at this level, what happens in small rural towns. And Jim gave me the perspective that I sort of had myself too, that really helped me a lot. And I'm gonna miss that, because hopefully he'll still call me, and Josh, I hope you feel you can call me anytime. And let me have it, you know, if it's gonna affect the school in a negative way, which many of them do, and I agree with. Sometimes they're great ideas, but they don't even think that, you know, it may work down in Portland, but up here it's a different place. So I want to thank you for that, Jim. It's been a big help. It's made me, and especially since I'm on labor, there were quite a few labor bills that had to do, that sort of got into your business. And in a way that probably wasn't realistic at all. And having Jim on my side to speak with a lot of the people that I need to speak with was unbelievably helpful. And he's been a dedicated public servant and, you know, a model for all of us like you that are trying to do this. And so I've never heard other than kind words for Jim and the work that he does. So without further ado, I'm taking all my time. I do have something for you, Jim. And let's see. This is the official part of my duties. So I have a sentiment here from the state of Maine. And it reads like this: the state of Maine, be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives, join in recognizing Jim Boothby of Ellsworth, who is retiring as Superintendent of Regional School Unit 25 after 35 years of public service. We extend our congratulations and best wishes, and be it ordered that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 131st Legislature and the people of the state of Maine. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Ron. Seeing as how we have no other public participants, we can move on to adjustments to the agenda.
You have a couple. We need to add to L1A, April Hall, Food Service Director. And if you add to L1B, Matteo Michelini, DMS Golf Coach.
Next, we have approval of the minutes. I would vote for a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes of May 21st, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, that is unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have communications and correspondence.
You have a couple of items in there, shared with you that our middle school will be having the mobile bio lab coming next school year, thanks to Ken Burnham. We make that arrangement. That's exciting. They actually roll it in and they'll park it right up there for the week, and the classes can go and do all kinds of experiments and everything. So that was fun. And it was, again, another step by Mr. Burnham. He didn't have to do that, but he saw that as something benefiting the kids. Also, we have a letter from MSSA. That's what I have for communications for you.
Superintendent.
Yeah, I get my report in right on time this afternoon. That's the last one.
What do we gotta do?
Yeah, what do you gotta do? A couple of things I just want to point out. What an exciting spring. Between what went on with robotics, Track team did a great job. Our middle school girls softball team is winning championships up in the university. You got baseball and softball, high school up there competing for state championships. Amazing and very, very exciting. And it's a lot of fun to chase them around and watch those games. The outcomes weren't exactly what we were hoping for, but the outcome is it's actually the last thing, You can be champions without a trophy. It's the process and how you go about it. And kids did a great job. They did. Very, very proud of them. You have the totals in there for the budget vote, which is good. Pretty typical. Since I've been here, we pretty much have a 3-to-1 ratio, which is a great. And depending on the numbers, some years they have bigger turnout, but it's typically 3-to-1, and that was good. I did give you an update. We'll talk about it, about the unallocated funds reserve. An update in there from Mr. McGuire. I did get a report today from BIMS. They found a great deal of rot on the plywood, and they replaced that, actually pulled the roof back 4 feet, replaced that all, and they said that's no cost to the district. That's absorbed part of it, which is, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We don't have a whole lot of contingency money built in there, so
They've done a lot of that.
they've done a lot of,
Well, yeah.
Did they say how much it would have cost?
I didn't ask.
Yeah, you don't want an accidental bill.
So thank you.
Yeah, I didn't mention it.
And if you haven't been up around the middle school, they are making some nice progress. They do have some of the sheets of the exterior up there. The color is almost identical to what it was before, which just shows the quality of people picking up. color.
Didn't I know? Didn't you do
We
such
did
a great job?
Yeah.
Whatever, big. That was a new color, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure it
Sand, was
matches.
it sand?
Yeah.
Make sure it matches with what we
Right.
call.
Yeah, did it.
But it's gonna look very, very nice, and we're gonna see more activity up there. They didn't bring a very large crew while school was open. So they're planning on bringing a larger crew to come up and really push it, so knock on wood, that'll be all taken care of on time and be ready to go, but it does look nice, and as long as we keep getting the bills additional cost of 0, we'll be fine. If not, Josh will have to figure it out. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Jim?
No, but I was gonna ask about the roof, because my husband said, are we replacing the roof? Because he must have noticed. And I said, no, I think just the siding. I'll have to ask during the meeting, so
Yeah.
that's cool. I'll report that.
Yeah, what they did is they rolled the whole membrane back.
I mean, the rot wasn't cool, but I'm glad they found it and they took care of it for us. That was really great.
Part of their position was that they felt they should have found that in the original,
Sure.
so. Well, that's good. Yeah.
So this is the time for the board chairs report. Now, usually you've heard me say things that have happened through the month, sometimes at the end of June, I will tell you what's happened over the course of the year, but this time I'd like to do something a little bit different. And tell you sort of the course of what has happened over the period of time that Jim's been here with us. Now, it seems like just only a few days ago for me, that I was a happy young father of 2 young boys, one 4 and 1. And we had just gotten our kindergarten screening letter. That was a long time ago, though. In that time, things were very different around here. George Bush was president. He had campaigned on improving our schools, only to be slightly distracted by 9/11 and handing the entire package off to Ted Kennedy, who created the wonderful Nickleby law that we all get to use. At that time, each state got to develop their own program as to what the testing would be. And so some states like Texas, you could probably go in, write a big X across the thing, still get 100. Other states like Maine decided to make the test more difficult than every other state in the entire union. So we naturally got four grades. And you could always be like Georgia, which paid its teachers to fill in the answers after class. because no one cheats in Georgia. But on the top, at the state side, we were doing also incredibly well. Baldacci was the governor, and he had instituted a wonderful idea of redistricting all of our school districts as a cost-saving measure, where we were going to get rid of those evil costs of school administration. This district looked like we were going to probably close all of our schools and have to send everyone to Belfast, or maybe Brewer, depending on which day of the week you were talking about. Was widespread condemnation of the plan, as every municipal government who ran schools at the time hated the idea of the loss of control and generally blamed everyone under the sun other than themselves for mismanagement of schools. At our local level, we were doing stellar. We had a series of inconvenient problems, such as a rap song which had been issued about a school shooting.
Oh, yes.
We had a series of principals who weren't getting along with the general public. And we had a new superintendent, not Jim, new superintendent, who had decided that it was her mission to tell all of us plebs how we were going to do things in the future. And it rubbed the community so seriously wrong that it's amazing she wasn't burned at the stake. In the process of all of this wonderful positivity, I foolishly decided that I would run for school board. And as I was running, I got to know our then superintendent a little bit better as I was trying to, build bridges. And one of the first things that I did was I took my sons, again, they were at this point 5 and about 2. We went down to Castine at Maine Maritime Academy. They had a robotics competition for youth. And they had all these little kids from all over the state playing with Legos, and they had built these robots. And so I came back from that just enchanted. What a wonderful program. We need something like that here. And so I went to Judy and I said to Judy, if I'm lucky enough to get myself elected to this board, it'd be wonderful. 2 of us could work on this together. That would be the first thing I'd like to do. She looked right at me and said, Tom, we don't do things like that here. I knew right then and there that we were not going to get it. And fortunately for me, the rest of the school board figured the same. So in a short time, we went to look for a new superintendent. And we looked at a large number of people, and we asked these poor people a tremendous amount of questions. Some of them seemingly ridiculous questions. Well, we asked them, we did. And it came to all of our agreement that Jim rose far above all of the opinions. So we picked Jim. And Jim came to our school to change our school. And one of the things that Jim had really sold himself on was that he had been in management before, and he knew business management. And he was more than happy to tell us that he had read some management books. And he had this stick about moving your cheese and paradigms. And all the buzzwords. I mean, he was cool. But despite having all of that happen, Jim seemed to hit it off with everyone. And Jim approached things differently than our prior superintendent had. Instead of dictating from high above. Jim went, and one of the first things that he did was to gather members from all of the communities to meet at the Area Center to come up with a plan of where we were going to go. We had buy-in from all kinds of people in town, right straight from the beginning. Jim went and he mended the fences with all of our member towns, which was critically important. Because one of the first things that happened when we did our redistricting was our prior superintendent had advised the town of Orland to spend all of their fund balance. Jim worked with all of the towns so that we could help Orland in that situation, so that Orland wouldn't have a gigantic spike in property taxes. This built Jim a huge amount of goodwill, which was important because, as you will soon find out, things just keep happening around. So the next thing that happened was the mill closed. So now it wasn't Orland, it was Bucksport. And again, Jim went out and worked with the state, helped renegotiate how the state funding model would work, because it would have been so punitive to our district. It was enormous, just enormous work for him. But it didn't stop there, because it isn't just all about finance. Jim worked very hard to build the administration of this school. We had a school administration which was dysfunctional. Jim helped move people along who needed support and brought in a whole new group of people over time and didn't just plop them in and let them run on their own. Jim helped these people develop and grow. Some of our administrators have moved on and are doing wonderful things in other districts. But that's because of Jim helping them grow, not holding them back. And the ones who are here, I've watched you guys grow. And you've done some amazing things. I'm very proud of all of the work that you guys. But I think all of you can admit that Jim has been there helping you, not trying to hold you back. And then, of course, there's the parents and the students. When I was first here, the idea of parent involvement was a mystery. The school did not even know what on earth you were talking about. Parents don't come here. They drop off these little leeches and drive away as fast as they can. What are you talking about? Jim helped to foster an idea of volunteerism. We now have a large number of parents who help to volunteer both in schools and during our after-school activities. That really didn't exist before Jim came. We've also started to adopt the idea that every student here is an individual, not just some cohort or clump of people because they're certain age or a certain gender or from a certain family group. Everybody comes here with a different need, and we try to meet every single student's need individually based on their own personal need. That is a unique thing which can be attributed to Jim. But before I get too sad, I just want to wrap up my beginning story. So when my son had gotten to middle school, he was in seventh grade. He and a couple of his buddies decided that they were going to try to raise some money so that they could start up their own little robotics club. And they had a dance, which is pretty darn amazing for 4 kids that had never been to a dance before in their lives. But the 4 boys put on a dance and they raised some money, and PTO matched it. They bought 2 little erector sets to do this robotics. And Jim was kind enough to allocate a ed tech to be the coach of this highly funded robotics program. On top of that, Jim, I believe helped to encourage certain somebody over at the high school to maybe start an engineering program. And that somebody is going to be our new student. That little tiny program continued to grow and succeed and grow and succeed. And you all know what the end result of that is. We went from a place where we don't do that to being one of the best teams in the world. That is the fact, Jim. And for that, Jim, I want to present to you this an intricately decorated present on the card from the school.
Thank you.
You can see that my wife was away this weekend, so that, you know.
I got it. I love it. And you know, when the first time we met with the teachers, everybody got a small piece of Cracker Barrel cheese with 2 dimes paid to it, and they just embraced that. Like there's nobody's business. Got a whole range of comments that came from that. Well, thank you very, very much.
No, if I could add one thing. In the mornings, there's a group of elderly gentlemen that like to meet at McDonald's and solve all of the world's problems. Yeah, and Jim would once in a while would stop in there. And my neighbor saw me one day and he says, he says, that Mr. Boothby, he's just a regular guy. Just a regular guy. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. I appreciate it greatly.
With that, we'll move on to committee reports. Curriculum?
I don't have much of a story. We did not meet. We met on the 2nd, and I believe you already have my report from them.
The finance committee, we met right before this meeting, for the, regular, budget. We, look like we're going to come in with, being okay, but we don't have in the summer salaries just yet. So I'm hesitant to tell you exact numbers. The, lunch program looks like we're going to be probably in the area of short about 10,000, which is really good because we projected, to be short about 40. And for the senior program, they still have some funding there, but it's not enough to get them through a year. So, they may need to do some diversions. Any questions for finance? All right, next we got policy. Policy committee did not meet. I'm sure that
I would suggest that Dr. Kirk would want to have a meeting in July, so you can have, there's some policies that need to be reviewed. We'll go over that. So you can have them ready to go.
Once I anticipate we'll be meeting soon.
Yes.
Next we got facilities.
Yes, so we met on May 23rd and Anthony gave a great presentation on this newfangled robotic turf tank, what is it, turf tank robotic field painting machine. And it generated a lot of discussion and Anthony did a really good job of the pros and cons. But most of the guys on that committee wanted to know how much money it was going to save. And we hemmed and hawed about it, but there is potential for money savings, but it was mostly time savings. Once you get that going on the field, it goes by itself. It's run by satellite. And while that's being run, the person who sets it up can go do other things. And that seemed to be a pretty neat thing. And the guys who were kind of skeptical at first kind of liked it towards the end of the meeting. You want to elaborate on that at all, Jim?
It's amazing.
It is.
It's an amazing device. Second generation.
Yep.
You're seeing more of it. It's a subscription product, so you don't purchase it. It's more of a lease. And then you can buy a certain amount of support. Anthony's gonna continue to do some more research, come back to the facilities committee. It's nothing that is an immediate purchase, but it's just looking down the road.
Yeah.
The potential to increase efficiency and a break-even cost type of situation.
I guess Thornton Academy, you would
Yeah,
now.
Florida Academy's got.
Very happy
Yeah,
with it.
Brewer now has one. We also have Foxcroft Academy has, you're seeing it more and more. A lot of the colleges have it.
And our robotics team cannot build one, we're sure of that.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
That was brought up.
It was brought up.
It is,
Just checking, they're pretty
Patent
good.
is kind of patent.
it is proprietary. It does have a patent.
Yeah, and the
And access to the satellite.
Satellite, that's the-
GPS might be.
That might be a little expensive.
Actually, you'd be surprised.
Well,
Well, look into it.
No, the access to the satellites, that's super easy. Put $100 Garmin unit in it.
well,
Well, this, oh my God, 27 satellites.
yeah, run 27 different satellites.
Yeah, it's,
At that level, obviously, we have to have multiple.
And it's accurate within a quarter of an inch.
yeah.
It's just
Well,
unbelievable.
And they did do some, lines on the football field to show. And it's kind of, are you kidding me? They do a soccer field in just almost minutes.
20 minutes,
Yeah.
So while they've got that out running, they can be weed whacking or doing other.
which would take, two people would take new soccer
To do
field.
it for you.
The first time takes 6 to 8 hours. To paint over, it takes 2 to 3.
So, and it does include, paint.
Paint. Yeah.
Pretty much a break even with the paint.
Yeah.
They were saying.
And they service it. That's probably fine. But we also talked about the welding shop ventilation proposal. That was an $85,000 project, Jim.
Yes,
Okay,
and I've got more information for you than I'll.
okay. And then I think the third thing we talked about was the robotic welding arm. How it could possibly be funded by the state.
And so both, the legislature, in their budget, put in, set aside $20 million, which is managed by the Maine Bond Bank. And that $20 million is specifically earmarked for career technical education, new equipment purchases and upgrades of equipment. I have checked both the ventilation project and the, robotic welding arm qualified under those, so we're gonna go forward and fill out a grant application for that and submit that. However, there is a catch. The law, when written, failed to recognize satellites, which were a satellite.
Yeah.
And because of that, and that's in direct polar opposite from what chapter 313 says, that a satellite program must be funded, managed, and staffed by the SAU that hosts the satellite program, not the center. But because the law has been written the way it has been, and trust me, I've had conversations at multiple levels. It's just right now, we will complete, Dr. Tripp and I will complete the application. We will submit it to Mr. Tracy over Hancock County Technical Center, and he will has to get the signature of the Ellsworth superintendent to approve that. If that project or both projects receive approval, then it has to go to a vote of the Ellsworth City Council
Lord Almighty.
to get the bond. And we're out of it. So, you can see why I had a little bit of umbrage with the law. Nothing you can do about it now because the legislature is not in session, they can't change it, so it is what it is, we just have to work around it. That'll require a great deal of communication, which is fine. You know, I would be happy to be a citizen of Ellsworth and talking to the city council, so requesting their support. The town of Ellsworth, city of Ellsworth will have no financial obligation to this bond, it is 100% forgivable. 100%. So, but it is an awkward structure that we have to go through. But, you know, if we, jump through some hoops to get a new ventilation system, which is state of the art, it's point of activity ventilation. So as you're welding, you will have a draw right within inches of that, which reduces the exposure to any gases, any sparks, anything. It's all taken through from that. Our current is old technology, which is hood, draw, which is not as efficient, not as effective. So I did ask for clarification, was told yesterday that that would count as equipment, not infrastructure. Infrastructure, they only would support up to 15% of the cost, so it's an important distinction. The robotic welding arm, with multiple levels, why this is an important technology to bring in. It is the next step of where manufacturing is going. To give our kids that exposure and opportunity to learn and to have credentials that say, I have been trained on this, I understand the operation of this, will be incredibly valuable to them. It's also going to be written with the idea that adult ed can use that to support companies in our area that may invest in one of these, and they can have their staff come and train. We can also do adult ed programming for people currently in the field to upgrade their skills. We talked with one of the manufacturer reps, and we've had conversations with a couple of different companies. But they are more than willing to give us a very good price on this, and they'll hold that price for the required 180 days of the grant. And they'll support us, and part of that builds in ongoing training. So the manufacturer rep will come to this building and do training for instructor, for kids, for whoever. The only ask that they had is if they have a company that's interested in purchasing it, would we be willing to host a demonstration? That's a pretty simple ask. This robotic arm has enough technology where you can rough out your design, so you can CAD a design. And you would set that onto the template on the machine, and you give it its coordinates, its X and Y coordinates to start, and hit a button, and it will write its own code for all the wells, and it's, I think, 7-axis that it can do. So putting state-of-the-art technology in front of our kids and have them exposed to that, and have a chance to learn how to use that, gives them an amazing skill set that is going to be extremely marketable. And not to mention the other side benefits of what can happen to adult ed and everything. It's amazing, and to be able to have that with the opportunity that it's 100% forgivable. I mean, we're going to be in the area of about $200,000, and the grants there have to be at least $20,000 request and up to $1 million, I believe. So we're going to be right in the middle. So hopefully, knock on wood, we'll have success, but that's a project we're going to follow through on. But so you're aware it's going to be an awkward process. And we'll have to work it. We just have to work within the structure that's established and make sure we communicate and make sure that folks understand the why. And it's not just going to benefit Bucksville High School students. It's going to benefit all kids from Hancock County. So hopefully it's an easy understanding. So, yeah, that's more than you wanted to know.
That's all I got.
That's all I
got.
Any questions? Next, we've got HCTC.
Well, we did not meet, we don't meet until September, but Bill Tracy did send out an email. He'd like to change, and I'll be honest, I can't remember. It's the law enforcement. Plastic wants to change the title of it, and I don't remember what it is, but.
No, I don't think
sense.
it's one.
No.
It wasn't that.
I can tell you in a second. I'm just going to look up his email.
It's the, I don't remember. I was just thinking how we didn't meet, so I didn't.
So, with the hospitality program that we changed.
Was that the, I'm not sure that it said something about law enforcement.
Well, Scott is correct.
The hospitality was a couple months
I
earlier.
just want to notate that in a minute. There's a reason for that pause.
Historical event.
So the recommendation is change the name of law enforcement to criminal justice.
That was, yes,
And that was supported by the advisory committee.
and it was unanimous.
Yes.
So when I finally checked my email, said,
Yeah.
that's all I have.
Okay. We have no old business. Under new business, we've got some resignations and retirements.
Yes, we have, April Paul is requesting to step down from food service director. She'll get us through the summer. She is interested in going back to work in the schools. She just wants to step down from being the director. Ruth Brindle has taken a new job at HCPC. Kennedy Goodine is an Tech One for us. She's stepping aside. And Sherry Deans Kelly custodian is also stepping aside. Unfortunately, this has health-related components to this. Definitely think the world of Sherry. She's been an amazing employee. As soon as she gets back on her feet, I've encouraged her to make sure she gets her name back into the pool. Stop because of the requirements of, so she can have compensation for long-term disability for other things. She has to step aside.
James Buchanan.
Yes, James McCallum, stepping aside, so.
Well, I move that we accept the resignations as a block with regret.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have some nominations.
Yes, I have two nominations for you both in one support personnel. Ginger Kegley is extended school year at Tech One. And for golf coach for the middle school, Mateo Missiolini. We actually have multiple candidates for middle school golf coaching. Who knew?
I didn't think we'd get any. I think we get two.
Had a good interview process, couple of good candidates, but Mateo was the one that was supported unanimously by the interview group.
Well, I move that we accept the nominations as a block.
Second. We have a motion and a second of these. And we also have unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have board computation and declaration of the fiscal year 2025 budget validation results.
Yeah, so as I had in my report, you did pass the budget with a total of 936 yes votes, 250 no votes, and 21 blanks. So 1,207 ballots. That ratio turns out 77.55% in favor and 20.71% against and 1.73% left it blank. So we have a budget. The final step is for you folks to put your signature on the
In the correct
document
places.
in the correct places.
That's gonna be
And
the
it's gonna be
real
in the right
challenge.
place, so Scott and I need some assistance.
So Sue, if you bring the paper up, point in the right line.
Point to it for him.
Maybe move the hand.
Right there.
You know, they do sell a report signature
Needs to be
machine, that's been used for years.
I don't think it's fancy, it's just blue.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
It has to be blue so they can help us.
All righty, here you go.
Yeah.
There's water on
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's all there.
Not what
I don't.
Are you there?
And I was-
It's fine.
I wouldn't. know.
That's my last chance.
Well, I know. He was like a kindergarten
I've been
teacher.
this way forever,
Yeah, but like.
but like, I just don't want.
I could go do this once, so.
Yeah, I think so.
Dad,
Oh, yes, do it where
do
she.
you understand why I have?
Hey, it's a focus on
Most
that.
people, if they can, actually already done well with one bill.
Only one, but still. You gotta look at that.
I can't help it, it's just
We did.
drained.
Consistent.
I mean, the rest is a little less than when I'm in.
That one line right there.
I lied, Eric, you lied.
I'm not Jim Booth.
You're not.
No.
Yeah.
Don't even joke.
All legal documents, Scott.
Well, I'm hoping we can do it. That's right.
A memory. So good. So that.
How many times?
No,
We had early in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need to do that. They changed it up. So,
Yeah.
well, good. So, we need a motion to declare the results of the.
I move that we declare the results of the 2025 budget validation results.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Next, we have board consideration of possible action, transfer of the normal fiscal year 2023 unallocated funds into reserve accounts. So voter action at the May 24, 2023 district budget. And these are 23.
These are $23.
Okay.
Even though we just passed the 25 budget and finishing up on
24.
the 24 school year.
Is that one?
This is the life of the superintendent, the
Never
business office should live in 3 years, always.
That's why I always ask.
Yeah. So, one of the things I always do and make sure when I'm working with the auditor is we want to know what our encumbered monies are, what do we have for balance forward, what do we have for monies already in reserve accounts, what do we have for summer salaries and things we have to account for. Once you get done all of that, then you have a number that's called your unallocated fund balance. From your unallocated fund balance, you are allowed to move into reserve accounts with voter approval, which you received back in 2023, to move up to $300,000 into the capital reserve fund, up to $50,000 into the special ed reserve fund, up to $50,000 into the tech reserve fund, and up to $10,000 into curriculum reserve fund. In your report, I shared with you a table. You should see it in your packet. That when you look at those reserve funds that we have, and the audited balance as of July 1, 2023 for capital reserve was $981,072.51. If you approve the transfer of the $300,000, which is the maximum allowed by voter action, you would then have a balance July 1 of 2023 of $1,281,072.51. Now, mind you, that you have already got projects for FY24, which we have encumbered $400,000 for the middle school exterior project. And in FY25, the $175,000 for the removal of the in-ground oil storage tank at Miles Lane, the replacement of the water booster pump and associated activity around there. So what you will end up with at the end of that, you will be right around $640,000 in the capital reserve, but that's 2 years ahead of yourself. And if that makes sense to you, it's clear as day to me, so.
Yeah.
Hopefully you understand that. Sped Reserve Fund, you started in July 1 at $118,000. Voter approved transfer of up to $50,000 will give you $168,000. Why do we have a special ed reserve fund? You can have a high cost out of district student show up, and it could be $100,000 plus for just one student. Now, granted, there's money that comes back for special education for high cost out of district placement, but it's not until the year after or the year after that. So you got to have some bridge money to cover yourself. So that's an area we've had to tap into that before, but that's an area you want to have a little bit of room. You never know. Technology reserve was $215,676.98 as of July 1. Adding the 50,000 would take you up to 265,676.98. Why is this important? We know that technology, we have a major infrastructure upgrade we're gonna have to do with our servers, virtual servers we're gonna have to build. That's quite expensive. We also know we're gonna have to replenish our staff computers and have that coming on down the road. So again, we do this to try to minimize the impact to the regular budget. These are monies that are already been raised for education and expended for education is fine with voter approval and then board approval. Okay. Curriculum, fuel reserve, we didn't put anything in for this year. We put nothing in there. We have been, knock on wood, we've been able to control our diesel costs through bids. And I have good news on that. We actually came in 10 cents below last year and well below what our budgeted amount was. So we should be in good shape for next year, which is scary because you only have one company that will even give us a quote. Only one. Yeah. And we do that together with town of Bucksport. So we're purchasing a significant amount of diesel. Curriculum, we did ask for up to $10,000, started off at $87,325. It would take it to $97,325. Again, we know if we purchased a series, whether it's a reading, math, social studies, that number could be anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000. But what I want to point out here, and part of the future planning of this in 2027, you were going to have to do reaccreditation of the high school through NEAS. And that's a costly endeavor. And so the plan is that's about a $60,000 cost. So you would be able to, with board approval, cover that cost out of this money and not have to put that in the regular budget. There's going to be enough upward pressure on the regular budget with a number of things coming after it. The more you can control doing it this way, the better off you are. So that's the rationale. You do have the money there. I had a good conversation with the auditor. When all said and done, you would have about 4.79% left in unallocated funds. You have one more year, you can be as high as 9% of unallocated fund balance. And then if you go over 9%, you have to do something with the amount of money. You have to have a plan to get that money back into the town's hands. And it's up for debate, the process, we won't go there. But in 2026, you have to be no more than 5%. We prior to, oh my God, this is 5 years ago, we were only allowed to go up to 3%. 3% is not a lot of money considering what we have for costs for payroll to payroll to payroll. So I targeted that 5%. I think it's 4.79%. It puts you in a good position. So you can carry that. You don't have to worry about dropping it down any quicker. Happy to answer any questions. I threw a lot at you. The simple ask is with the board's action, if you approve the transfer up to the amounts the voters approved, you have the funds to do that. You will be in position to have money left over within the boundaries of the law. And you'll be able to seed your reserve accounts.
Not quite related to this, but what's the process for officially changing the name of transportation fund to buy a new bus fund and keep putting money in there?
What I would suggest you would do is next year, actually, because there's a fuel reserve fund, which is by law established. Okay, when they did the Consolidation Act, they clearly said you could only have these reserve funds. Okay, capital reserve and fuel reserve and no other reserves. Until they read Title 30, which says that you can have other reserves that are established by your governing body. Okay, so we are allowed to do this. So Keith, what I would suggest is you can do one of two things. You can change that name to a fuel reserve / transportation reserve. Okay, or you can set up a separate transportation reserve. Either way, whatever the board's pleasure is, and then Dr. Tripp can work on getting the language put before the voters. And if you get voter approval to establish that, then you could do that. I think capturing the fuel reserve and one, making it a transportation reserve inclusive of fuel, if that's allowed, I would suggest you do that. But I think it's high time we start getting some money into that, because you do have a bus fleet and you're gonna have to start that cycle within the next few years of purchasing buses.
Yes, we are allowed to kind of do both then.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, with voter approval. Yeah. The biggest thing here is whatever you do, you have to go to the voters to ask for. For expenditure, every one of your reserves can be expended by board action alone, with the exception of capital reserve that must have voter approval before you can expend that money, and that is by law. So. Okay, great.
So just so I understand, right? Motion is up to, or are you looking for a specific amount?
I would suggest a specific amount And I would suggest a motion to be worded as motion to approve transferring a maximum allowable amount into dedicated reserves as approved by the voters.
So moved.
There you go.
Second.
Get a second. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Well done. Good play.
We learned that from the budget, the budget meetings.
All right. Next we got overview of ESEA fiscal year 2025 grant application.
I'm the time of year again where we need to write our ESEA title grant applications for all of the different titles that we qualify for. Part of that process is to make sure that I share with the public forum, the proposed projects and the budget for that. We will keep the window of public comment and input open for a 3-week period from tonight. And so folks, this will be on our website as well. And folks can email me for comments, suggestions, feedback on the proposed projects. So you had in your packet a copy of our allocations for this coming year in all of the various titles. So we qualify for Title I funds for our K-8 schools. High school does not qualify for Title I funds. Our preliminary application, or excuse me, our applications at this point are $464,586 in Title I Part A. That is a slight reduction from last year. It's roughly a $5,000 reduction in that particular title. And then you jump down to Title II, which is for professional development funds that supplement and not supplant our current budget, what we do for professional development. Our allocation for this year is $68,612. That's a reduction of roughly $3,500 over last year's allocations. And then we get Title IV funds, which are to support any academic enrichment or intervention programs. And most districts who receive Title IV funds roll their Title IV funds into Title I to increase their Title I allocation. That is what we have done historically in this district as well. And unless there's an objection to that, we'll continue to do that. Our Title IV allocations, $46,898. That is also a slight reduction from last year of $2,000. So the application process, the application is open now. I need to submit the application by the last day in July. That's when it's due. I will not submit the application until the public comment window has ended. So that would be July 9th. That's a 3-week period from now. So just so the board knows, this is similar to what we have done historically in our district. We are school-wide Title I programming at Miles Lane, Jewett, and VMS, which means that our title funds can be used to support all children who are not receiving other special design services. So we primarily use this money to do staffing. This case for Title I interventionists at middle, elementary, Miles Lane, Jewett, and middle school. We also do use a little bit of this funding to make sure that we have the supplies we need to provide those interventions in math and ELA. And we use the funds for after-school programming and for summer programming. A little bit of this money also is used to make sure that Title I staff that we employ get the professional development they need to carry out the interventions that are approved. As far as the Title II, we use that money primarily to cover some courses. So our staff, our administrators, ed techs, and teachers through the collective bargaining agreement can take graduate level or undergraduate courses. And so we use some of our Title II funds to help pay for those courses. We also have money budgeted in my curriculum lines and staff support to cover it as well. And then any professional development. So last year, when we joined the PBIS cohort, we were able to use some of our Title II funds to, even though training was free, we had to get our people there. So we were able to use some Title II funds to cover that. We will do that in year 2 as well. And we set aside money for family engagement. It's a requirement by the federal and state government that you set aside 1% of your Title I allocations for family engagement. So the totals that I gave you on the back side for each of the schools, that includes funds for family engagement activities, which we typically do through either resources or family literacy and math needs. Questions about our use of our title funds?
Are we given exactly this amount and have to spend exactly this amount? Is there any rollover from previous years
Great
or? Or is this reimbursement up to this amount for things we do?
That's a great question. So we can carry over a certain percentage. We cannot carry forward more than 15% in any of the lines. So typically, and Katie and I work very closely on making sure we are keeping track of what we spend. So like Jim said about how he lives in certain years with the budget, Title Brands also live in certain years. So we have so for right now, FY 23 funds need to be expended by September 30th, and I will do a performance report. We have the FY 24 funds, we'll have this extra year to spend. If we have them left over, as long as we don't exceed that 15%, which we won't. We will have the next year to spend those. So it's similar to like how our budget cycle works, we're kind of living in 3 years as well.
So if we don't expend all that money, do we get less money following year?
No, that's not taken.
We just have to give back whatever excess of 15%.
Okay, cool.
And we can apply for a waiver to be over 15%. We can do that once every 3 years. We haven't needed that because the state has received a waiver from the federal government for the past several years to be above that. I make sure we're not above that 15%. But if we were right now, the entire state could be above that and it would be okay because the federal government gave the state a need waiver. That may or may not happen in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You don't need any action. I'll just note in the minutes that there was presented questions asked and answered.
Next, we have discussion of possible action to grant superintendent the authority to transfer fiscal year 24 funds up to 5% between cost centers as needed.
That's allowable by law, and that gives you the laws built in, so it gives you a comfort. And I'll give you an example. CPP, we budgeted a certain amount of additional tuition to pay, and it went from $500 to $850 a student. So we were short that amount of money, which overran that budget line. So you can transfer up to 5% out of each cost center back and forth. So by granting, and this is one of the quirks, okay? Asking you to give this authority to the superintendent allows us to document it within the fiscal year that we're discussing, okay? But we won't know exactly where we're gonna be until we complete our audit next year. But with your authority, and I'm sure Dr. Tripp will come back to you and give you the, okay, we went over in this one cost center by this much, and this is a recommended transfer. But by granting this authority, that gives us cover and approval, because if we don't have the authority in the fiscal year of that we're talking about, then technically you're not supposed to do it. Nobody can give me an answer as what happens if you don't do it. But so long-winded conversation. It's just a technicality. And this goes back to 12 years ago, when we were following what we thought the law was. We didn't change it until we had our audit. And it came back and said, oh, no, you're supposed to do that in the spring. Nobody said that to us. So I said, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I did my penance, and then we were allowed to do it. And ever since then, we've asked this. So
Has it always been 5%?
that's the max allowed by law.
Okay, so. I know we've done this in past years. I didn't know the amount, if that had changed or fluctuated.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I would look for more.
Well, I move that we grant the superintendent the authority to transfer fiscal year 2024 funds up to 5% between cost centers as needed.
Second.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr. Tripp.
Yeah, but he wasn't superintendent during the fiscal year.
Doesn't matter.
Did Jim have to
It
come
says
back?
it's different. I remember we changed this so that it wouldn't say Mr. Lee.
Okay.
That's why it's a title instead of a name.
Never.
Okay.
Understanding, Keith, anytime, when I leave, it's amazing how many mistakes I'll have made. That's good for 12 months.
There's a warranty.
Yeah.
That's it. After that, it's on its own.
You know, sometimes we live within 3 years,
Yeah,
so.
it's all right, 1 year.
So next we have administrator reports. Did anyone have administrator reports for June? Lot of times we don't.
I think
you
you're
have fine, right?
Put them in there.
Well, we just got Christina's.
You guys are fine.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, we read them all online.
All right, good.
You get to know what I did.
And we would move towards calendar and announcements.
I do suggest that your policy committee, typically you meet the week before the board, suggest July 9th. That's a Tuesday. That's up to you. I'm not gonna be here. But I do know that Dr. Cripps engaged in an activity with MSMA on the 8th. Covering for you, Johnson, so, yeah.
Thank you. The curriculum, are you guys meeting?
I don't think we need to.
No.
We'll meet again in August.
All right. Finance and school board will be on July 16th. Facilities.
We've been getting emails from Anthony.
We've been getting email
That's what we
updates, I'm not sure.
When I talked to him, I think he just planned on doing
I
updates
think
through the summer.
Maybe he missed an update. Okay. All right, and Aspire, is Aspire still meeting? Okay.
I think she said something about being out of town for July.
Oh, well, that makes it easy. Looks like we got.
Yeah,
policy,
I think
finance.
she's gonna follow through, right, with curriculum.
Then I would look for an adjournment.
I moved when we get.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second, all those in favor? That is unanimous.